Awesome.
So Joel, one thing that I know I've seen you post about, and you and I have had a chat about this, both on your show and offline as well. But the idea of employer branding, recruitment marketing, it's something that's been kind of a buzz term for a decade now, or maybe longer. But I know that you feel pretty passionately about how companies are maybe doing it incorrectly or how it's not being deployed correctly as a recruitment strategy. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think, we'll start here. How do you think recruitment marketing should be, or what's the most effective way it should be deployed today and utilized within a recruitment strategy?
Yeah, look, I appreciate the question there, and I think what I've realized is there's two different elements to this. You have the content creation, which I actually think most employer branders, communications, marketing departments, they usually have pretty professional content. The bit that I think most people are not great at is the distribution. So that's taking that
Right.
content and knowing how to get eyeballs, more importantly, the right eyeballs on it.
Mm,
So, and that's a team sport. So just like you could consider recruiting at times a team sport, um, it requires everybody working together, having a clear strategy,
yeah.
understanding how social media works, understanding who their target market is and how they think. Um, but again, like I think a lot of the actual content people create is great. And
Mm.
I found that the quality is usually there. It's just is not really a cohesive team mentality when it comes to distribution.
Thinking about social media, I know you're plugged into basically all the big platforms and you've done a lot of testing on these platforms. Do you think the value from social media is more so like from a brand perspective? Do you think it's in understanding trends and what's popular, what's not? Or do you think it's more so understanding the psychology and understanding how people operate and how they think in the current market?
Yeah, look, I think it's a bit of both, right? I mean, I think it's important to understand again what your candidates are thinking, uh, what future candidates are thinking, what the upcoming generation, how they're viewing the world, how they're perceiving things, and I think in recruiting, when we're putting together outbound messages,
Hmm.
how you're presenting the brand you're working with, how how much you understand your actual candidates you're reaching out to,
Hmm.
um, matters. And so you want to view that the same way with social media. You want to understand what's going on, but also you want to be involved in those conversations as well. And I think social media kind of gives you both. So you're able to stay in touch with what's going on. You're able to
Hmm.
actually join a lot of those conversations. So if somebody influential in your industry puts a post out and you have a counterpoint to it or you want to add to the conversation, you're able to do that. And then on the flip side, you're able to put together really, really compelling messages that maybe you just traditionally have just, again, sent through an email, phone call, had kind of like that one-on-one interaction. Now you're able to scale that to a lot of people. And so I think, if you're wanting to be a consultant as a recruiter and understanding the business, it's important to understand not just your business, but what's going on with competitor
Right.
businesses, what's going on with your industry. And I think just regular interaction with social media can give you that. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, it often feels, I think, with like employer branding and recruitment marketing that we're talking at the market. We're telling the market about us, but it's not really a conversation, right? It's more of like, here's us letting you know what we're doing. This is what we're about. And I think in some sense that does make sense because that's what really marketing is putting your company and your brand out there.
Yeah.
But I think what you're introducing is more of like the idea of a conversation and really being a part of a greater conversation, which in turn could lead to you being able to share that message with different audiences. But I think that's one thing that I've seen as kind of an area where employer branding might be missing the mark a little bit. Is aside from it feeling very canned and very corporate, it
Yeah.
also is a one-way conversation. And I think that when we look at like what content does really well, and especially in the B2B space or the recruitment space, it's those that are starting conversations, with
Exactly.
candidates and with the market.
Yeah, a good way to think about it is, how many conversations am I starting online that are converting to offline conversation? That's definitely something you want to look at. And then how useful is it that you're putting out? And I think, understanding like where your content's useful and how it's useful is important as well. For example, anybody who follows me knows that I lean a lot on humor. And a lot of like funny. What I mean, I think in recruiting, like you've got to see the sense of humor in just what goes on with just people interactions. Otherwise, you're gonna hate yourself. But what I noticed was that most recruiters I talked to had kind of a similar sense of humor. And do I think that it's so funny? Somebody just posted on LinkedIn and said, like, if a social media pro says like memes, it's not a viable social media strategy because big brands aren't going to take it seriously. And I read that and go, well, that's great because like I don't really have any interest in working with like a Pepsi or Apple or Amazon. They got their brand, right? Like you don't need someone. But for small businesses, this is where like something like a meme that's relatable could be helpful. But it's understanding, who it is you're looking to attract, and do I then go, well, every day you should post a meme? Like probably not, because it's useful to a certain extent. But that's again, like you want to gauge. Like a meme has its purpose. Maybe the purpose is distraction or like just a feel good vibe. And then you have a podcast, then you have a live stream, then you have all these different ways that you can reach people. Yeah. So I think, but I think a lot of times people aren't thinking about how useful what they put out is. Like I think most of the time people are thinking, how many likes am I going to get? How many click throughs am I going to get? I'm like, well, that matters sometimes, but not always.
Yeah. Do you think, obviously, we're going to unbox this as we progress in the conversation. You're more on the independent side, but if we dial in on the corporate side, up until this point, it's kind of been, kind of the company name, which has a person hidden behind the scenes. It might be a marketing expert, someone just like posting on behalf of the company.
College intern.
Internship, social media manager, social media intern, whoever it is, there's someone like representing this whole entity, right? Yeah. Do you feel that it's gonna change as we move forward? Like, I know in some companies, like recruiters are doing it and becoming kind of, they're not being paid for it, but it's part of their role. They're becoming brand ambassadors. And like, as like Apple, Apple and like the CEOs of these brands, like you look at the data and people follow people. Like the individual people have more followers than the brand itself. And so do you think we're going to see more of that we're going to see like people become brand ambassadors for companies, and people are going to follow the company, but through a person and not through the company page, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we've been seeing that, right? And I think of like affiliate marketing is just such a great example of this. Like there's people that will make money on social media when people click through links and then they buy the product, they're getting a commission of that. So that's already happening. I think in terms of like talent strategy, I think we'll see more of this. But I think the B2B space is it's just been behind on social media because most of the people who have been making the budget calls haven't really understood social media and really taken it seriously as a way to connect. But again, even the term social media, when you think about who you follow, like, are you following brands? No, it's like you're going to follow people because you have stories, you have their journey. It's more interesting, right?
Exactly.
So, but I think like for a recruiting team, this is why like when I'm working with clients in a sales meeting, I always say like the goal isn't to create 10 LinkedIn influencers. That's not the goal. The goal is to give a window of what the company's really like, with a strategy of talking about your interaction with the company, which people care about, what the company's doing, open jobs that you have.
Exactly.
Right? The idea is to fly under the radar and like get the right people, even if it's 5 qualified candidates reaching out to you. It's a big deal, right? I take that over 700 unqualified people on a job posting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, well, I think more companies, they get that. It's just, it's what I'm finding in like working with brands and doing these B2B partnerships. Things I refuse to do, copy and paste something and just put something generic. Like it has to be in my style. So a lot of the sponsored content I do, it is actually in the form of like comedy. And what we're doing is we're looking at what's the problem you're solving. Let's make fun of it and make it relatable. So everyone goes, yeah, I hate that problem. And then here's a solution for that problem. But that's a process and you've got to work. So I think if you're looking at those types of brand deals, you have to keep that in mind. Like you have to keep your integrity, your voice. And if you're going to back something, you either have to have tried it or you have to have a really good understanding of how it's actually valuable, right? And have some alignment there. Taking random brand deals, probably not the best way to do things.
You got to be strategic.
Yeah. And from a corporate standpoint, I think there's been a hesitancy, you touched on it, Joel, just the lack of understanding. But I think also, companies first and foremost want to stick with the company's brand identity, right? And making sure there's alignment on that. And so it does take a little bit of extra work if you are going to take these extra steps and invest in individuals to make sure that they are in alignment with what the company brand is and make sure there's no roadblocks that you run into or any kind of PR disasters that come about. So I think, I do think you have said it well, that this is starting to really come to the forefront, and we're starting to see, the latest data I've seen is that individual pages on LinkedIn get 7 times more engagement than company pages. Dang. And so it's very clear that, people engage with people. I mean, it's very simple. It's human nature. So now what we need to do is really hone in on how do we equip people? And what does this look like? Does this look like creating cohorts within our business to, create template and assets? And this is where I harp on that partnership with recruitment and marketing. Like they need to be working in lockstep with each other, because recruitment marketing, I believe, it's not a new tree that you're planting next to the marketing tree. It's another branch on that tree, right?
Yeah.
And they need to be working in sync with each other. And so I do think this is something that is going to be coming to the forefront even more so than it already is, of companies of all sizes, because, again, we can't just rely on a name brand to speak to people on an individual level. We really have to be able to say, how do we equip our people, or equip, whoever wants to participate and represent the brand in this way? How do we enable them? How do we equip them? And how do we, kind of take that extra step to make sure that they're aligned and they feel comfortable representing the brand?
100%.